Well, Michael Hartnett was a great friend of this house, and my dad in particular, my mum. He stayed with me for Writers' Week. I had a house up the road. We had the greatest time ever. I was single at the time. Michael had arrived. We could sit down at 6 o'clock in the morning and have a little chat about poetry. And the one thing I think that everyone realises about Michael Hartnett, and this is aside from the genius, that's a given, is just what excellent company he was and how kind he was to everyone and how he always wanted to bring out the best in you rather than himself be the centre of attention. He encouraged me to write. I'm so delighted to be asked to do this, especially in a time when Newcastle West and the Stole, all friends, are separated by rules and regulations. So we're bringing it all together. I'm going to read a couple of stories. One is about memories. It's about a skip. In the middle of all the mayhem, you know, you start to go through stuff and you're clearing stuff out and the memories come back to you. Anytime you get a skip, it just revisits everything. A skip is therapeutic, said the man collecting the big container from outside the back of our pub. The skip was full of pile-tie rubbish, which was in a way a bit like a layered dig on an ancient archaeological site. The Vikings left combs, coins and shells. Ours was broken beer garden furniture, cracked toilet cisterns, damp duvets, treacle paint buckets and old clothes left by the inebriated and not so much as stylish enough for the togging out of a scarecrow. The remains of the torn, the broken and the useless were piled high. I didn't dump anything of importance. There is no doubt but that we often buy so much we want but don't need. Goodbye then to the tailor's mannequin I used to scare off would-be robbers. One woman was sure there was a body dumped in the skip when she saw the leg sticking out. This was the story of a home and a pub, a family of all of our lives, and the memories came back incrementally with the finding of every piece of home lore. One memory triggered another, forgotten history was brought back before our very eyes. There was the treasury of old photographs. My mum was kissing Uncle Dan goodbye at Kennedy. That one made me cry. It was the last time they met. Then there was the one of Mum and Dad with their arms around each other, and you could see how much they loved each other. They are still together somewhere here in this pub, in this house. The photo was a reassurance that they are still very much in love, wherever. We found a whole story of old Christmases and me there with my big mad head of black curls, whooping it up with the brothers. There were letters from Dad to my sister Joanna. He wrote of how much he missed her when she was away in college and how he was so happy to have finished writing his novel, The Bowral Makers. We found Joanna's old record collection and my Greek grammar. I was in the last class in Ireland to study Greek and I loved it. I gave an hour going back over the phrases from far away and long ago. We found Grandad's collection of Charles Dickens and a letter from Brendan Kennelly to me, praising a book I wrote when I was badly lacking in confidence after a terrible review. It wasn't just the going back, but the learning of life lessons. I resolved to write to people who I admired and to praise them. The skip man was right. The going back was good for me. I couldn't even get myself to watch Dad on YouTube because it made me too lonesome. I spent days going through the big plastic bags stored in the attic, in the extension our parents built when we were teenagers. It was a gentler way of reminiscing as I slowly and carefully sifted through the story of us. There was an old football jersey I permanently removed from the Listowel Emmett's kit bag by way of a secret protest. It had 17 on the back and I was peeved I didn't make the first 15. I came across a picture of our under-14 football team. We won a lot together and we lost a lot together, but we always stuck together. I had it in my head to bring it to Maurice Walsh, my pal since baby Slass. He passed away on Thursday. I loved that man. He always had my back, on and off the pitch. Maurice backed me even when I was wrong. He was a fine footballer, brave and honest. The old photo is in front of me now. I found buried treasure there among the dust and the cobwebs. There was a clearing too. I could see the contour of the rooms and our tiny upstairs over the pub and out the back where us boys were moved. The decluttering was like setting a bird free from a cage. Soon enough the skip went public. The skip foragers were looking for items that may have been of interest to them but of little use to anyone else. One woman took a green from the mole plastic chair with a broken bottom that was a cracked buttock pincer. Then late at night I spotted a man bringing 2 bags of assorted rubbish, a child's car seat and a fur coat made from what looked like rat hide. I left him be. All he had to do was ask and I would have said belt away, but I'd say getting permission was no good to him. It was like raiding an orchard when we were kids. The people who owned the orchard would have given us the apples no bother, but there was no fun in that. Then this lad wearing a waistcoat asked how long we were going to keep the skip outside the back door. "It's an eyesore," he said, "and we'll draw a vermin." He wasn't even from Listowel, the tidiest town in Ireland. "The skip is here for good," I said to him. "We got a grant from the Arts Council. The skip is an installation." Off he went, full of fight, looking for some victim to unload his angst upon over the shameful carry-on by the government. I was going through the last bag when I found the lost one-act play. It was called Mother Columba and was written by my dad in the early 60s. The play was written out in his own hand, in pencil, in tiny writing, barely readable. The play was never heard of and it was about life in a convent. I think Dad may have chosen not to go any further as Auntie Kathleen was a young nun at the time and he was afraid he might embarrass her. The skip man was right. There was therapy there upstairs as I sifted through lives and times in the cold air. I probably wouldn't have been able to face the looking back if it didn't happen upon me accidentally in the course of the tidying. The skip man's name is Anthony Sexton from Templeglanton in West Limerick, where Michael Hartnett comes from, and he was another man who brought back old memories in a permanent form with his incredible poetry. Anthony told me of how his customers told him the filling of the skip was like watching a documentary of the story of their lives. We meet philosophers in all sorts of places and situations. There was a sense too of how much we lived. The findings were a timeline through a life I had lived but largely forgotten. I felt I had lived longer than I thought I had. Looking back without tangible and tactile reference points can be too condensed, too quick. There is no time to think and no hints. The skip doesn't skip. This next story I'm going to read for you is about a woman who lives here in Listowel, and she's known as the woman who hasn't had sex for 39 years. There is no sex in the story, just in case you're of a delicate disposition. How could there be sex in a story about a woman who hasn't had sex for 39 years? I'm writing a novel about her at the moment, and it's tricky to write 60,000 words without any sex in it these days, but that's what's going to happen. This is a story I wrote, and it was published in the Irish Independent, and it got 90-something complaints. But the editor thought it was great. So I'm sure the Aicse, the Michael Hartnett fans are of a very liberal and tolerant disposition and won't be in the least bit offended. Anyway, this is the story. It has been a while now since we brought you an update on the activities of the woman who hasn't had sex for 39 years. Her affairs, or rather her lack of affairs, have engrossed the nation, and men in particular. Last time we told you her dead husband may have been shopping in New York. There could be very serious social welfare consequences. Mrs. 39 may be forced to pay back 27 years of the widow's pension. More about the dead man walking later on. I'm aware and have been made aware newspapers are no places for stories about sex. I was told if I keep on writing about Mrs. 39, the Irish Independent will end up on the high shelves where Playboy was kept. Only basketball players will read the paper, warned our circulation department. To my detractors I would say, how can you accuse me of writing about sex when the woman I'm writing about, namely Mrs. 39, hasn't had sex for 39 years, rising on 40? So keep on reading if you are one of the moral minority. There is no fear of you being offended in any way. You might even get to find out about the newest news from the story of a latter-day Lazarus who was Mrs. 39's late husband. Personally, I think he's dead, but so too did Doubting Thomas. The reason I know for a fact Mrs. 39 hasn't had a bit of sex since our last update is that she would have told me so. Mrs. 39 knows I'm thinking of writing a book about her life and times, and she has been made aware by me if she did have the bit of sex, my novel would be dead in the water. Mrs. 39 can do as she wishes. Her sex life is her own, but I did suggest subtly that if she had a bit of sex, I would have had to hand back the advance I was given by the publishers, Ballpoint Press. The problem is I've already spent the money. I have to admit, I did put a few good men off her in my role as gatekeeper. There isn't a week goes by that some lad doesn't present himself in John B's asking for an introduction. The Monaghan chicken farmer asked me Mrs. 39's age. I always honour Mrs. 39's 2 major anniversaries by giving her a card with a lotto ticket inside. Mrs. 39 has no interest in winning a large amount of money as she is afraid it might change her. Shouldn't be laughing at my own story. All she wants to do is spin the wheel, and I will tell you why later on. Her birthday is scheduled for April 30th, which is the same date as last year when I was sent 57 bottles of perfume for Mrs. 39. Lads, please do not send any Chanel, Lolita Lempicka or Issey Miyake this year. Mrs. 39 has 19 years supply stockpiled and has taken the pouring perfume down the bowl as toilet freshener. Every time she flushes, her house smells like the entrance to Brown Thomas on Valentine's Day. I told a suitor from Mana and Mrs. 39 was no spring chicken. One of my great gifts as a barman is that I talk to people in their own language. The chicken farmer told me he himself wasn't as much gone to 60. He was well up for the date. I didn't come all this way for nothing. We will make the feathers fly, he said. The chicken farmer volunteered to put Mrs. 39 out of her misery. I was annoyed. I admit that much. Things are so tough in the pub game right now. Us publicans have to put up with conversations we would never have listened to in the good times. As he was only drinking tea anyway, I spoke my mind. Is it how you think, I said, that women who have no interest in the other thing are automatically miserable? The chicken farmer was taken aback. To be fair to the man, he thought he was doing a good deed. It was a Christian thing to do, he said. It's not that Mrs. 39 hates men just because her late husband went offside. Mrs. 39 is nearly gone broke from lotto tickets. She is mad about winning streak presenter Marty Whelan, but only as a friend. Marty never met Mrs. 39 and will only become aware of this platonic love when he reads the column. Marty cracked one of his famous jokes last Thursday on Lyric. It went, what did the traffic light say to the approaching car? The answer, look away, I'm changing. Mrs. 39 hasn't stopped laughing since. The poor woman needed cheering up. There have been several alleged sightings of her dead husband in New York. He was said to have been seen mixing concrete on the 54th floor of a Manhattan high-rise. Mrs. 39 was sure this wasn't true, as Mr. 39 was afraid of heights. Then she added, with a hint of bitterness, he never walked a day in his life. When Mrs. 39 was happily married during the first 3 days of the honeymoon, she described Mr. 39's long nose as Roman. After he ran off with the younger woman, Mrs. 39 referred to the nose as a schnout. I asked the woman who spotted Mr. 39 in Macy's to retract, just to put Mrs. 39 at ease. She agreed. Are you sure it was him, I asked. I'm fairly certain, said the woman. I noticed the nose, but it was the walk. It was the walk that I recognised. He had a very distinctive but barely noticeable limp. I asked Mrs. 39 if her ex had a nice walk. She sighed. Oh yes, Billy. He had a very sexy walk. It was as if he was a cowboy after getting off of a horse, and he had a lovely bottom for the wranglers. He had one leg shorter than the other, but that made him even more desirable. And there she was, looking off into the yonder of long ago, as if the dead man with the John Wayne gate was walking up Willem Street to greet her. I'm worried now. What if he's still alive? We will have to start a GoFundMe page to pay back the pension, and another GoFundMe page to pay back the publisher. And if Mrs. 39 comes back to Ireland, will Mrs. 39 fall for him all over again?